When the man who assaulted me had a job at my high school as a coach, no adult in my family did anything about it. They knew what he did, they knew he was a dirtbag. Everyone I found out later in the family, they knew this and they did nothing. He kept his job, he kept his status in the family. No one did anything. I was on the softball team while he coached the baseball team. Same hours, same campus. No one did anything. This is episode 2. I need you to pull up, buckle in, and let's get at it. Welcome back to the Judgment Zone. This is your girl T, part 2 of my series on my book, A Child's Memories of Cartoons and Murder. Last week, not even last week, last episode, we covered the morning that gave the book its title. When I was 4 years old, and I watched the murder of my mother's boyfriend, and I watched her get shot. I was 4 years old. I want you to think about that. Matter of fact, let me show you. That is what I was. I was 5 in that picture. I was 4 years old when I watched the assassination of another man in my house. Well, in this episode, we're going to move forward from the murder. We're going to move forward from being in witness protection. We're going to move forward from being in the federal prison for women with children. That's episode 1. Go back, take a look. Today, we're going to move forward about 10 years, okay? Because while America was busy losing its mind over the crack era in the 80s and 90s, the crack era was happening inside my house. It was happening. It was hard and heavy. Warning, okay? It's a little graphic. This episode talks about a functional crack addicted parent, about a sexual assault I survived at the age of 13. If that's not where your nervous system is, you can't handle that, you might want to move on from this episode and go on to episode 2, episode 3. I'll still be here though. So, again, no trigger warnings because as a child, we don't get trigger warnings as kids. We just have stuff that happens to us and we have to deal with it and we have to move on and we have to, keep pushing forward and keep progressing. As kids that deal with trauma, we don't get trigger warnings. We just get triggered and traumatized. Never a warning. But if you're here and you can take it, then let's go. Let's do it. Okay. So by the time I was in middle school, my mother had she had 2 other babies. No, she just had my brother Troy. Um, no, she middle school right before I went to high school. She was with a man named Cedric. She had 2 more children while I was in high school. Okay, Cedric though, he had just gotten out of prison. They were in love. They were fighting sometimes. They were breaking up. They were pregnant again. Then they were doing it all over again. It was incredibly toxic. It was like everything you believe about toxic relationships where one person is in and out of lockup. Okay. And in the middle of all of it, my sisters were born. But even before that, crack was running through our community. But here's the thing, when you are young, you always believe that you're the only one going through some things. So you kind of embarrassed, you kind of embarrassed. But as I got older, I started realizing a lot of my friends in the neighborhood, their families were going through the same thing. It was crazy because now that I look back on it, a lot of our family, because our parents used to party together in the neighborhood. And I didn't know until later on that we were all dealing with the same poverty, the same drug epidemic, the same, people in and out of jail and prison. Had no idea. But anyways, my mother became what we call a functional addict. She kept a job sometimes. Uh, she kept the lights on most of the time, but not all the time. She hid it from the kids most of the time, but it was there, right? It was there. We knew something was off. The neighbor next door, she was using too. The neighbor next door, her name was Arvella, and I think her boyfriend's name was Fred. They were using too. Sometimes my mother would have me carry a lighter over there. Arvella would be like, I guess you would call my mom, and I would have to go take a lighter over there. Sometimes the neighbor would send something wrapped in a napkin to our house. I didn't know what it was. I realized what it was later. I was a child carrying drugs back and forth between grown women in houses, grown women with kids. I didn't know what it was. I just knew not to ask and do what I was told. One day I came home and the house next door had burned down. Came home from school, the house next door had burned down. The neighbor had fallen asleep with, after a session, and the house burned down. Her baby was inside. That was crazy to me. That was one of the craziest things. And my mom explained to me what happened. She was very honest. If she was going to tell me something, she was going to tell me the truth, like the whole truth, or either she wouldn't even discuss it. So she never soft walked it. She was like, they was in there smoking. She fell asleep. That's what happened. That's how I would get information. That's how I learned things. The crack era hit Black families in a way that nobody who didn't live through it can explain. But now, obviously in adulthood, you're realizing that some of these families are dealing with, meth problems and uh, cocaine and all kind of drug problems that we didn't deal with back then. And then we got a bunch of crackheads, ex-crackheads, that have lived through just about everything. But the new drugs, people are dying after the first hit. I don't know. That's just a sidebar. Thought I'd throw that out there. Anyways, the environment was always fun and friendly until it wasn't. So, there were times where they would have, after the first of the month, there was always a lot of people at the house. And they would be at the house partying for 2 to 3 to 4 days until the supply would run out. And the kids would just be in and out of the house. Folks having stations around, having their little sessions. It was wild. Sometimes they'd send the kids out. We still had to be home by a certain time, but it was around the first of every month. It was always going down. Okay. It was always going down. With all that being said, my mom was very functional. She was still functional. My grandfather, J.C. Watts, is the real reason that I made it through, though. He paid for what I needed for school. He showed up when nobody else did. He made sure I had what I needed. He kept my head above water. Okay, he lived in East Palo Alto. He couldn't tell my mama nothing, but when he had the opportunity, he would take care of what I needed to be okay. When I had a tryout for cheer, two girls named Tara Trim and Demisha Taylor, I'll never forget this. They pushed me through it. They became lifetime friends. My mother never showed up to any of my games. I played softball and I was a cheerleader. She's never been to one of my performances. She had never been to any of my softball games. Never showed up. She actually didn't even show up for my 8th grade graduation. My aunt Loretta showed up and she took me and Tara out for lunch after the graduation. That was a norm. It was a norm for me, which was crazy because me and my mom, always went to my brother's games together. She never missed any of his games, practices, nothing, but never showed up to any of mine. That was a norm for me. That was a norm. So yeah, 8th grade graduation, she didn't show up. My aunt showed up. She took me and Tara to Sizzler And it meant a lot. It meant a lot because I really didn't expect anybody to be there because that's really how it had been. My grandfather took care of me financially, but he was a hardworking man. He worked every day. I don't think the man took any days off, maybe Sunday, and then he went to church, and after church, get ready for crack of dawn, work again on Monday. So he didn't really get into the minutia of my mom's life. I know he didn't approve of the things she was doing, but he did what he could when he could. I kept my head down. I kept pushing forward. I knew that the only way out of that house was a diploma. I knew that in junior high school. Now, I'm going to introduce you to this man. His name is Steve Worthy. He was my Aunt Loretta's husband. So he was my uncle most of my life. He was charming. He gave me money, candy, hugs, the kind of attention I didn't get from any other man. My father was gone. My grandfather was not affectionate, and he was always very hardworking. Steve, I think he knew he filled that gap. He was also a wife beater. Okay. I watched him put hands on my aunt when I was 6 or 7 years old. He knocked her through an apartment on Madeline Drive. I will never forget that. The baby was in his room on the bed screaming. I was screaming. She called the police. He ripped the phone out of the wall, took the keys, and left in her Camaro. Yeah. When the cops finally got there, she asked them how to keep him out of the house. They told her that she was married. There was nothing they could do. Nothing. I was 7. Okay. I was already learning that the system was not built for women in our position. It just wasn't. The moment the police told her there was nothing that they could do, that even as a child was something that I don't know, it kind of broke something in me a little bit. Because remember, at 5, I watched a man shoot my mother. And now at 7, I'm watching my aunt get beat down by her husband. And the police are saying there's nothing that we can do because you're married to him. For years, my mother would ask me random questions about my uncle. Has he ever touched you? Has Steve ever done anything? Has he ever made you uncomfortable? Has Steve ever done anything strange? She would always ask me these questions, and my answer was always no, because nothing had ever happened. Nothing had ever happened. Not knowing why she was asking, I would find out later in the worst way. What I did know is that my mother had her own information about Steve. She knew he was a predator. She just wasn't willing to tell me that directly. She thought she was protecting me by being vague. Well, she was wrong. She was very wrong. The night it happened, I was 13 years old. I was sleeping on the couch at my aunt and uncle's. My mother was working at my grandfather's club in Palo Alto that weekend, so I was staying there. I woke up because someone's hands were on me. Someone was under my clothes. Hands on my breasts, hands on my legs. I did exactly what I did when I was 4 years old and the shooting started. I froze. I told myself, do not panic. Do not scream. Do not breathe. Do not say a word. This is not happening. I was laying there like, this is not happening. I have to be having a nightmare. This is not really happening. But it was happening. And the person doing it was my Uncle Steve, the man who had given me candy, who had given me money, the man who I had trusted, the man who I knew from watching him beat on my aunt. He was capable of hurting me. That was crazy to me as I'm laying there, frozen. Hmm. I played possum until the front door opened, and my mom's brother, Tony, he came in. Steve walked into the kitchen with him like nothing had happened. He jumped up off the couch and just walked in the kitchen. They started laughing and kikiing. They talked. Uh, the conversation sounded like they had all just been at the same place. This was an era in which folks were partying, doing drugs, doing their thing. So I think they had all been at the same place. While they were in the kitchen, I ran into the bathroom with the phone. I called my friend Debbie Shea. Deb is still one of my favorite humans. She and her mother came to get me at the crack of dawn the next morning. When I was in the bathroom, I had called her. I was speaking Pig Latin because I wasn't sure if he could hear me in the kitchen. So I started speaking Pig Latin to her, telling her what had happened. I was so afraid. I was so afraid that he would hear me. It's Pig Latin. I don't know how many of you guys ever had a secret language with your friends, but man, I was so happy we spoke Pig Latin. They showed up for me the next morning. Okay. And I'm grateful. I'm forever grateful to them. Well, look, they showed up. They came and got me. I called my mom while I was with Debbie and her mother. Her mom used to vend at the Berryessa Flea Market, or the Capitol Flea Market in San Jose. So we went and we did that. And while we were there, I called my mom, who had gone to sleep because she was working at my grandfather's club. So when she woke up, we got in touch and she eventually came and got me. And I told her what happened. And she believed me. Of course, I was afraid because it's always the story that when you tell someone that you've been assaulted, it's possible that folks won't believe you. Yes, even my mother, I was afraid that she wouldn't believe me, but she did. She believed me. She stood by me. She believed me on the spot. She told me she had been asking me about Steve for years because she already knew what kind of man he was. Now, as happy as I was that she believed me, I was hurt because why hadn't she just told me that I needed to be careful around him? Why didn't she prepare me? But that is not the worst part. The worst part is what happened after that. My mother told my aunt, which was her sister, and she told my grandmother, Grandma Lady. Steve denied it. He called me a liar. He said I was an adolescent looking for attention. My aunt and my grandmother believed him. That was it. Let me say that one more time so it lands. Two grown women in my own family chose the man who beat one of them senseless over the niece and granddaughter that he assaulted. Steve never faced any consequences from my family. Never. He never faced any consequences from law enforcement at the time. However, my mom did come with me and we filed charges. They investigated. Back then. There was no whole DNA thing. It was kind of my word versus his. And they told me that there was probably nothing that they would be able to do. But I did file a complaint against him. I did file for him to be arrested. And they did. They investigated. So sometimes it's hard for me to understand when grown women are too afraid to report assault to the police. I was 13. And yes, I was afraid of how it would go if he didn't get prosecuted or if nothing happened to him. And I still did it. So as a 13-year-old, if I can do it, I still don't understand why a grown woman would not report an assault of someone who she says she's afraid of. I don't know. Again, this is the judgy podcast, so I'm just letting you know sometimes I'm a little judgy about that because as much fear as I had at 13, I still reported the crime. He went on with his life like nothing happened because they couldn't prove it, but it was still a matter of public record. And later, that would come into play. And then the next school year, the next day, the next school year, that whole time, Steve was a coach. He was the baseball coach at my high school. the same high school where I was on the softball team, the same high school where I practiced on the same field. This man that assaulted me, the same high school where my friends were on the roster, the same friend that came and saved me. This was weird to me. It was just very uh, crazy how society can just act like we're just moving right along. So this whole Epstein thing that's going on in our society, it's nothing new to me because being able to just move right past assault like it never happened and the girls are lying, that you know, it's very familiar to me, unfortunately. I had to look at that man who assaulted me walking around my campus around other young girls, and there was nothing I could do. I would find out later that he was inappropriate with other young girls at the school and other women in our community, in our city. Again, nothing's ever been done. So this is kind of, you know, something I witnessed growing up. It's not new. So for a lot of people that are outraged about someone that has committed sexual assault or violated young girls and not being punished and them continuing to walk around like nothing has happened, that's not new to me. It's not. And that makes me sad for our country that that is a familiar feeling. It's very familiar and it hurts me for them. It's just kind of, Anyways, in the middle of all that, I had a regular teenage crush, a neighborhood boy. I'll just call him Max. We've been friends for years, and as we got older, we both got cuter. Well, I got cuter. We started liking each other, that whole thing, living in the same community. His parents shut that down, though. Not because of anything I did, because my skin was too dark. I would find out later that another black girl, a light skinned girl, was coming to his baseball games and sitting with his mother. And he wasn't black, by the way, just to throw that out there. I had been replaced because of how much melanin my mother gave me. I will tell you, I did something pretty petty about that. I was hurt. And when you're that young and you find yourself feeling that kind of hurt and resentment, sometimes it could just lead you to do some bad things. I told some boys from a rival team that Max had hit me. They fought him at the next game. It got ugly. I had to come clean later because it had just gotten out of control. I came clean about the lie, but I did tell them what the real reason was. Okay. I had never told anyone the real reason before then. But I would rather have been seen as a liar than a girl who was not light enough to be loved. Let me say that one more time. I would have rather been seen as a liar than as a girl who wasn't worthy of love because of my skin color. Colorism in black families and black communities is crazy. And even crazier in black and brown communities because even Latin families have light skin and dark skin Latinos and Latinas. So I was thrown. I was just thrown for a loop. What it does to dark skinned girls is crazy. It is really crazy. And we have to learn how to live with it. We have to learn how to process it. And then we have to learn how to move past it. I survived it all. I survived the crack era inside my own house. I survived my Uncle Steve being a pedophile. I survived a family who chose him over me. I survived the school that hired him. I survived a boy whose parents thought my skin was a deal breaker. My grandfather, he pulled me through. He has always been my moral compass. When my mother wound up moving to Sacramento to chase her baby daddy. My grandfather wound up getting me an apartment with my Uncle Charles while I was in high school, so I could finish high school at Independence High School, um, and without interruption. He made sure I had what I needed, as he always had. I graduated, I got accepted to Grambling University. My mother tried to hide the acceptance letter, so I would just move to Sacramento with her. I went anyways, couldn't get there fast enough. And by the time I left for college, I had already built a spine to survive everything that life could hand me, right? It's everything I would ever use in my career: reading a room, trusting your gut, documenting everything, not waiting for grown people to save you because they will let you down. So, on the next episode, I have some more receipts for you because the man who killed Ralph kept coming up for parole, and the state of California kept having to decide what to do with him. Two governors of California by name on record in the next episode. So stay locked in. I had a part in keeping him locked up. I had a hand in that. And I want to tell you all about it and how I did it. So that's next episode. Episode 3. We'll finish it up there. A Child's Memories of Cartoons and Murder is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Link is in the notes. If this episode hit for you, do not skip number 3, okay? Make sure you show up. Okay, let me know your thoughts so far. And again, this is kind of an overview. I really want to give you an idea of what's going on in the book. There's still a lot of details left out, but it also helps you get to know me a little bit. With all that being said, let me know what you think. Okay, see you next time.